All right, so learning unit 1 was about an overview of South African macroeconomic environment, and then 2, the goods market, of course, where we have that very popular diagram, which is taken over from first year, and then we again have the financial market, which is also not so new. Right, so the only thing that was relatively new here was the ISLM model, right? We basically combined the goods and the financial market, and then we put it in one graph where we had interest rates on the y-axis, and then we had on the x-axis the GDP, which is your income, which is written as y. Right. Now we are going to be looking at this in an open economy. Right. We're going to be looking at this in an open economy. And then from there, the effects, I think these here, the effects of the interest rates and exchange rates, this is also still part of the open economy. So we have this also in the assignment. So we will want to move quickly on that. There's nothing complicated anyway on this. So we actually have a reason to move very quickly on that, right? It's so good that we are doing a multiple choice exam. So multiple choice is very easy, actually. You can basically do it without having to think much, having to write. I, for one, dislike writing essay questions. So multiple choice definitely makes it easy for all of us. All right, so let's start it off here, right? Once we have worked through this section of this learning unit, we should be able to explain the concept of openness in the goods market, identify and explain the factors that influence economic participants' choice between domestic and foreign goods, define the nominal exchange rate, and distinguish between different ways in which nominal exchange rate can be expressed, right? Distinguish between an appreciation and a depreciation of the normal exchange rate, define the real exchange rate. Explain the factors that would cause a change in the real exchange rate, distinguish between an appreciation and a depreciation of the real exchange rate, explain the movements in the real exchange rate of South Africa, and then the concept of multilateral exchange rate. All right, so this is basic. I think you are going to see how basic this is. So openness in a goods market, we are referring to an ability of consumers and firms, of course, to choose between domestic and foreign goods. So this is opposed to, right, this is diametrically opposed to a closed economy. So an example of a closed economy would be one economy that has been, say, put under international sanctions. So such an economy doesn't have the option of trading with other countries. So it's a closed economy, it's not an open economy. It doesn't have the option for foreign goods. So we are referring to the goods market here particularly. Exports and imports. So we can't do either of those, right? We are basically relying on domestic production. Right. So while there are different ways of measuring the openness of the goods market, the most popular is to express imports and exports as a percentage of GDP. I think, I'm not sure if this is found in ECS 2603, but they probably do those calculations. So you basically take a total of your imports and your exports and you divide it by your GDP. So it measures the openness of an economy. So it measures how open we are to trade, both in terms of importing and exporting, both of those. That's one measure, one important measure that is used. Right. So in South Africa in 2017, it was at 29.32, and then exports were 29.32 of the GDP, and the imports were 30.29 of GDP. So indicating generally that South Africa is an open economy, right? So this calculation, you can basically do it either way. Either you express your exports as a percentage of GDP, and export and your imports as a percentage of GDP, or you basically take imports plus exports, then you divide that by GDP, multiply by 100. That will give you again another measure of openness in the economy, right? So when goods market is open, which means we are open to trade, economic participants, which is the households, firms, the governments, do have a choice between domestic goods and foreign goods. All right. So, but obviously, because we are now looking at two different markets here, we are looking at domestic market and foreign market. You can't buy in a foreign market using a domestic currency, right? So which means you need to convert your domestic currency to a foreign currency, and then under those circumstances, you must be able to transact in a foreign country or in a foreign market, right? So which brings us to the issue of the exchange rates here, right? Which brings us to the issue of the exchange rate. So the key factor that influences the decision is the price, right? That's the key factor. It's not the only one, but it's the key factor, which is the price of domestic goods relative to foreign goods. So in other words, which is the real exchange rate there. So whenever in economics we talk about real, think about actual quantities. Think about actual quantities as opposed to amounts, numbers, which basically change depending on many factors. So what this basically means now is our decision to buy locally versus buying abroad is determined by how expensive the goods are. So in other words, I had a friend, if we take this as an example, I had a friend in the US. So we're talking over the phone the one time, talking about the price of McDonald's hamburger. That's the price of a McDonald's hamburger there and how much it is down in South Africa. You see? So if we are putting this good for good now using constant prices, then we'll refer to that as a real exchange rate, right? As a real exchange rate, which is the price of domestic goods relative to the price of the foreign good, right? Relative to the price of the foreign good. So you'll realize that it was, I think, on our assessment, it was more expensive in the US there. So why would you want to go and buy a burger in the US when it's cheaper, when the very same burger is cheaper in South Africa? It wouldn't make sense, you see. So those are some of the decisions that influence or that drive you into buying locally than buying abroad. But sometimes there are circumstances where things are cheaper abroad. I think in one class we were talking about these cattle that the president breeds, the Angolas. They are originally from Uganda. And the price, if you check the price in Uganda, it's about maybe 3,000 to 4,000 maximum, the price of one Angola. But down in South Africa, they are auctioning those cars for almost $1 million, you see. So there are many other reasons why that's the case, right? Including maybe certain qualities that the other breeds would have over the other breeds. But this is so to explain how some things can be cheaper in one market and more expensive in the other market, you see. So which is gonna drive, if you're just looking for a cow, right, for the sake of getting a cow, then it doesn't make sense for you to pay R1 million when you can get the same cow for about 3,000 rand just across Africa, just up the road there, you see. So now let's talk about the nominal exchange rate. So there are two ways in which the nominal exchange rate can be defined. So which is the price of foreign currency in terms of domestic currency. So this is $1 is to such and such an amount of rands, right? And then we'll have the indirect method. I think I need to, right. I think I'm gonna want to recheck this from another textbook, but it's okay. From the text that's given here, the direct method is the $1 is to such and such an amount of rands, and then the indirect quotation is going to be the 1 rand to such and such an amount of US dollars, which is going to be 0 point something. So this method here is the one that is more common. This is the one that is more common, where I think at the moment we are close to 18.5. At the moment we are close to 18.5. $1 is 18.5. I'm just going to recheck why all along I thought this was indirect method. I'm just going to check from another trade textbook. All right. And then this is the other one. So we need to be careful now when dealing with these currencies. What you need to identify now is, all right. So, okay, they say the price of foreign currency in terms of the domestic currency. Then here is the price of the domestic currency in terms of the foreign currency. Okay, it makes sense now. But what we need to be careful of when we are particularly going to be dealing with an appreciation and a depreciation here is whether who is the domestic currency and who is the foreign currency, and from whose perspective are you looking at this, right? Because sometimes, in fact, all the time, when one currency is appreciating, the other is depreciating. They both can't appreciate at the same time. These currencies are paired together, right? So it's one currency against the other currency. So in this instance, we can't both be winners. One needs to go down when the other is going up. So you just need to be aware of that there. So now we are dealing with an appreciation in the nominal exchange rate. So when we talk of the nominal exchange rate, anything nominal in economics is at current prices, something that hasn't been adjusted for inflation. So it's raw. So an example of a nominal rate is the one that you pick up from if you go to the bank now and you want to buy yourself some US dollars. You want to travel out of the country and you want to buy yourself some US dollars. So what they give you there is the nominal exchange rate, right? So when we talk of an appreciation now, appreciation is a gain in value, right? An appreciation is a gain in value, it's an increase. So when we talk of an increase in value, these currencies are basically treated as commodities at the end of the day, right? And the price of that commodity is the exchange rate. The price of that currency is the exchange rate. So there are instances when one currency becomes more expensive relative to the other currency, while the other one is getting cheaper. So there we are referring to a situation of an appreciation. So an appreciation, the nominal exchange rate, occurs when the price of the domestic currency in terms of foreign currency increases. So if you look at, say, if we want to look at our case in South Africa, now we are on 1850, right? 1850. So which means $1 is 18 Rand 50. So when our currency strengthens now, when our currency strengthens, it basically means that 1850 is going to go down, say, to 17 or 15. Let me see if I can put up a calculation on this here. Just to illustrate something, just to illustrate the calculation there. All right, so I'm gonna put up the calculation here. All right, so up here, let's have US dollars. And then we have our rand over on this side. Okay. And then we can basically repeat the same thing here. Let's repeat the same thing there. So we are in this is 2023, I believe. Right. Oops, sorry, $1 is giving us 18.5. Right. $1 is giving us 18.5. On this other way in which we can quote this. Right. So what happens now when we have an appreciation Okay, let's first look at it over on the other side. So if $1 is giving us 18.5 rands, then if you have a rand here, how much $dollars would that rand give you? So that should be 1 divided by 18.5. Right? So 0. That amount there. So which means 1 rand is worth 0.05. So just about 5 cents. Right? Or we round it off, that should be just about 6 cents. Right? So this is the value of the rand in terms of the US dollars. This is the value of the US dollar in terms of the rand. All right. So if we say down in 2024, something changes in the exchange rate, right? Let's say $1 now is worth, let's say $1 is worth 20 now. So you can already see that the US dollar has strengthened there. So that is an appreciation. It's worth more, right? That is an appreciation there, right? But let's look at it in terms of the rand now. So if $1 is worth 20 rands, then 1 rand is gonna be worth what? 0.05. So which is slightly less than what we had. And so the rand was worth more in 2023 than in 2024. So that should represent a depreciation there. That should basically represent a depreciation there. So what you should understand now, like I was mentioning, that no two currencies that are paired together can ever appreciate at the same time. So when one is appreciating, it means the other one is depreciating. That's what we are seeing there. Right. So this is easy to analyze. So you don't even have to do the other calculations here. If you look at in 2023, since we normally use this kind of quotation, if in 2023 it was $1 is to 18.5, if in 2024 it went up to 20, then it basically means the dollar is appreciating. So that should mean the rand is depreciating. So they could give you a situation that looks like this. Your daughter or your son can give you a situation that looks like this, and they ask you, oh, how good is the rand doing? You see, so you don't have to pull out the calculator, your pocket calculator or your phone to punch this in. You can basically analyze it from here. That okay, from the given data, there's an appreciation there. So that should mean the rand is depreciating. All right, let's have a look at a similar situation, but now we want to do it vice versa. We want to do it vice versa. So if we take the same information and we put it there, now let's say in 2024, the scenario has changed. $1 is 15 rands now. So $1 was worth 18.5, now it's worth 15 rands. So it has dropped in value. So that's a depreciation there. Right. So if it's at 15, so 1 rand is equal to 1 divided by 15, then it has slightly gained. It has moved from 0.05 to 0.06. So that there becomes an appreciation. So this one is going to apply here. Very easy, very easy. All right, let's proceed over on this one. So we can as well skip that there. All right, so how then do we convert the nominal exchange rate? So what we normally get is a nominal exchange rate. So how do we convert the nominal exchange rate to the real exchange rate? This is the formula there, right? This is the formula for that conversion. So where we are basically taking the nominal exchange rate as it is, and then we are multiplying it by this domestic, the domestic price level, and then we are dividing that by the foreign price level, and then that's going to give us the real exchange rate. So let's go back to the example and talk about this here. Right. So let's say, right, let's say we are dealing with this here, right? 2023. We're in 2023. Let's talk about a burger. How much anyone bought a burger recently? Did anyone buy a burger recently in a McDonald's burger? How much is it now? Lusanda or Hope, did anyone of you guys get a burger? Get a burger.
Okay, we can say 30 rand.
All right, let's say it's 30 rand. So that's the local price in SA. Right, so we are going to juxtapose this with the US. Then a burger in the US right? Suppose a burger in the US is $3. Right? A burger in the US is $3. Yeah. So if this is 2023, at that given rate, how much would that burger be at our given rate? So if $1 is equal to 18.5, and then we have got $3 here, then that should mean 3 times 18.5. You're not going to be asked to do these calculations, by the way. I'm just illustrating here. So which means this is what you have now. This is what you have. So which means the price of a burger in the US is 55 rand 50, while in SA it's 30 rand. So what then would be the real exchange rate? So our real exchange rate is 18.5 based on the formula that's given here. It's basically that it's the nominal exchange rate times the price divided by the foreign price. So which is 18.5 divided by, oh sorry, let's first multiplied by 30 divided by 5.5. So that's basically, this is the real exchange rate there. Right. How do we get that exchange rate without having to do this whole calculation? Just compare these two. Just compare these two. So it means $1 is worth 10 rands in terms of actual goods. You see, so that then is the real exchange rate there. But you unlikely be asked to do such a calculation anyway, but it's good to know. So what's the impact of the nominal exchange rate? So we have, if you look at that there, okay, being used to calculate the nominal exchange rate there. All right, okay, let's leave that out. I think I can just mention that the impact of the nominal exchange rate on the real exchange rate, right? The impact of the nominal exchange rate on the real exchange rate. So usually, whenever the nominal exchange rate goes up, if you hold prices constant, right? If you're going to be holding prices constant, then there's not going to be a change in the real exchange rate. But if it's going to be coupled with a change in the prices, then obviously there's going to be an effect on that thing. Let's see if I can put this up there on our example, right? So if our nominal exchange rate changes and say it goes up to, let's say it goes up to 19 there, right? Which means the price of that is given as 57, right? Then we can as well bring that up there to 19, and then that one goes up to 57. What's the difference? There's no change. So the only thing that changed is that there. Right? So as long as the price hasn't changed, then the exchange rate, the real exchange rate basically stays the same. So a change in the nominal exchange rate does not mean a change in the real exchange rate. But now if you suppose, let's take this back and say Right? This is now back to, if we take this back to 18.5 initial example. Let's say the nominal exchange rate doesn't change, but the price here changes, say it becomes 35. The price goes up. So if that one goes up to 35, the nominal exchange rate has not changed, there's definitely going to be a change now. Right. So our real exchange rate has changed. It has gone up to 11.6. So which means the depreciation now, it's a depreciation. SA is more expensive now than the US. So that becomes a depreciation there. So you can as well give all this out. So the impact on the price level is what we spoke about there. All right. So whenever the nominal exchange rate is bigger than, so this is the summary of this now. So whenever the exchange, right, so whenever the exchange rate times the price in this instance, which is the domestic price, normally as a result of, let's say, the price going up, and then your P is reducing, okay, a decrease in the relative price of the South African goods compared to the prices of the US goods basically reduces the real exchange rate. So if you look at a situation where, say, your at the end of the day, your prices have generally gone down in this instance. Ours went up to 35. Suppose it was going down, it was definitely gonna result in a real appreciation there. All right. And then obviously the opposite would hold true on that. All right, and then multilateral exchange rate. So bear in mind that because countries trade with more than one country at a time, the multilateral exchange rate provides us with a measure of the average price of South African goods relative to those of our principal trading partners. Right. Therefore, this can be defined. So they normally use this as the weighted average bilateral real exchange rate, with the weight of each foreign country equal to its share in trade. So what happens here, you basically look at your percentage trade, say with China. If it's say 30%, your percentage trade in the SADC region, if it's 20%, the US 10%, etc. And then you basically weight those currencies based on the level of trade that you have with those countries. And then you can then come up with a real exchange rate based on that. You see, but good, because we don't have to calculate this anyway here, even at that level, they don't calculate this. So it's something that you simply need to, know. All right, so in summary, E is the price of domestic currency in terms of the foreign currency. All right, so which is the rand is equal to whatsoever dollars. And then this here is a real exchange rate, which is nominal exchange rate times price divided by the foreign price, right? And then a real depreciation, etc. Right. So let's move on from this one and talk about openness in the financial markets now. Openness in the financial markets. So once we have worked through this, we need to explain the meaning, of course, of the openness there, and then explain the openness and in terms of the trade deficit and the trade surplus. There was a lot of this in the assignment. Then explain how to choose between domestic and foreign assets. Okay, this again, you'll definitely get a question on this. I feel like jumping to it. All right, so openness basically refers to the ability of foreign financial investors, the ability of financial investors to choose between money and domestic financial assets, right? Money and domestic financial assets. So to put it plain, we are basically talking about your ability to be able to invest abroad in the financial markets, to be able to invest abroad, to have the option to either invest abroad or to invest locally. All right. And then, of course, that's definitely going to be affected by the interest rates, the movements again in so the interest rates we're referring to the foreign interest rates, these are the domestic interest rates, then the movements on the exchange rates, etc. So when we talk of foreign interest rates and domestic interest rates, we are referring to a situation now where you want to choose, right? You want to choose now either to invest abroad or to invest locally with a given interest rate, right? So what does interest rate give you? Interest rate basically gives you the amount that you get once you pump in your money in a certain investment, right? That's what it basically gives you. So obviously, if the foreign assets are paying a lot more interest than the domestic assets, then it's only logical that you want to invest in the foreign markets. And then if the opposite applies, then you would want to invest in the domestic market. So which is why the interest rates are very important there. But over and above that, again, it's going to be influenced by the exchange rates. So we need to be on the lookout again for the exchange rates as well as the expected exchange rates, what we expect to happen in the future on that. Okay, so I think we are going to be dealing with a few examples on that one there. We're going to be dealing with a few examples on that one. All right, and then we have what we call a balance of payment, right? A balance of payment, which is basically, it combines the goods market and financial market, right? It combines those two there. So balance of payments, it records every one of the country's transactions with the rest of the world, right? So we look at the merchandise exports and imports, which is basically going to give us trade balance. And then we also look at on the financial account as well, where we're looking at the capital account in terms of the inflows and the outflows to the rest of the world there. All right. So what you need to be aware of here is what is a deficit and what is a surplus. So if you look at this, say, if we're going to be looking at this on the current account, when you have a deficit on the current account, so things that you find on the current account basically is merchandise exports and imports, and then you're looking at service receipts and service payments, which is basically gives you the invisible trade balance. So those two is basically on the current account. So when you have a deficit there, it basically means you have a negative, right? So that negative means you are importing a lot more than you are exporting, right? And then on the capital account, which has since become the financial account, right? You're looking at capital flows with the rest of the world. So are we getting investment into the country, or investment is flowing out of the country, right? Both of which are good, but if you are a developing country, you want to have, for the most part, foreign direct investment. So you want money coming into the country from the capital account. So when that happens, then it's a surplus. Okay, that one becomes a surplus there. All right, so the impact of interest rates and the exchange rates when you're looking at the choice between domestic and foreign goods. So the interest rates we have already spoken about. You want to look at whether or not the okay, you basically want to go for the one that pays the highest interest rates, right? But what about the exchange rates now? Let's have a look and see what happens to exchange rates there. So when we talk of the exchange rates, interest on a 1-year South African bond, if it's 4%, and then the interest on a rate on a 1-year US bond is given as 3.8. So if you just want to consider this as it is, it simply means you might want to go for the South African bond. And you might want to go for the South African bond because it pays more there. While this one is a 3.8, South African bond is doing a 4%, so which is higher. So you expect capital inflow there into the country. But now when we factor in the issue of exchange rates, then we want to see the expected exchange rates in the future, right? We want to see the expected exchange rate in the future. So what you want to consider here is whether the South African rand is going to depreciate or whether it's going to appreciate. So in this circumstance here, if the current exchange rate is 1 rand is to 0.1 US dollars, so we expect that it's going to go up to 1 is to 1, sorry, 0.1 is to 0.11. So this is going to be an appreciation in the rand. So which means the rand is gonna gain in value, right? So what you do under those circumstances, this is clear because the rand is gonna gain in value, then you can simply go for the rand. But I want us to analyze a situation where, let's say this is different, how you would go about that. If we say the SA bond is giving an interest of 4%, and then that one is giving the other one, let's say 3.8, right? This one is the US bond. So we said you'd want to choose that there. You'd want to choose that there. So which means what is your gain here? Your gain is basically going to be the difference between these two amounts there, which is 0.2, right? Which is that 0.2 there. But let's look at the exchange rate. Let's have a look at the exchange rate now. Let's say the exchange rate is supposed to move now from 0.1 to 0.11. Let's say we maintain that appreciation 0.1 to 0.11. So what's the percentage increase there? The percentage increase basically becomes that minus that there divided by the previous amount, compared to that previous amount. So the percentage increase there is 0.1. So which means in the end, what are you gaining? You are gaining, your gain is basically, right, the initial amount there plus that there. So let's put that as perfect. It's written perfectly how I want that. That's 10% there. So which means your gain is going to be 10.2% at the end of the day. So suppose this was a decline now. Instead of it going from 0.1 to 0.11, suppose currency depreciated, say, to 0.09. You see how quickly things change. So which means you are going to lose out. So even though the SA bond is giving you a better interest, given the expected change in the exchange rate, then you might want to go for the US bond, right? Because you get a negative return should you put your money in South African bond. So this is all the calculations that are given there. You'll hardly ever get these again. I think I'm only mentioning what's important for you to know. So you just leave that out there. So what they normally give us here is the percentage change, the expected depreciation in the currency or appreciation in the currency. So that's what we measure that against. So if, say, the expected appreciation in this currency is, say, all right, if the interest on a 1-year bond here is 11% in South Africa, and then the 1-year bond in the US is 2.5. So which means your gain here, should you invest in South Africa, is basically 11 minus 2.5, right? 11 minus 2.5, that's your gain, which is your 8.5. So if your currency is expected to depreciate by anything more than 8.5, then don't go for the South African bond. But if it's less than 8.5, you can stick to the South African bond. That's the rule there. So which is what we call the interest parity condition there. That's basically what we've been discussing. So you basically leave that out. So we are basically saying at the end of the day, what effect does the expected exchange rate have on your decision there? So should you hold an SA bond or a US bond? It depends on whether you expect the rand to depreciate versus the US dollar over the coming year by more or less the difference between these amounts. This is what we are talking about. So you can basically go through that there in your spare time. All right, I don't know if you have any questions so far. If you have any questions so far, I do not know if you have any questions so far.
We can proceed.
All right.
Hi, sir.
I think-
Hello.
Yes.
I don't know if maybe I'll be taking you back. Let me see properly. I
Mhm.
just want maybe a broader understanding on, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, because I think it's something that I've been struggling with, to literally compare the change of currencies. Ne? Like, for instance, as you are explaining, and I think it's helping me as you explaining it now, ne? But I wanted to sink in my head. Like, for instance, if maybe you have, okay, like for instance, now what the rand is, I'm not sure what is our currency at the moment. Like the last time I checked, it was like 22 rand. Ne?
Oh.
So if it's 22 rand, ne, does it mean that if someone has $1, is it, are they going to come here with less money and buy more from our side?
Yes.
And then from our side, it means that because our currency is bigger, it means that we cannot go to their country and buy from their side, because now it means that we'll be losing if we go to their side. The money that
Yes.
we have from our side won't have much value to the, like, I think that part confuses me.
But the way you are explaining it is very correct. It's actually very correct if you look at it in that way.
So it means maybe the reason why people don't buy from, but like, I'm trying to understand, why do we always go to other countries and buy from their countries, where else we cannot afford to go and buy from their countries? Why don't they come to our countries and buy from our side? Where else, whatever that they buy? Or maybe is it because we cannot, we do not make anything from our country, like we don't have any local things from our country that we can sell to their countries?
Yes.
Maybe I'm just confusing things.
Oh, you are saying the right thing here, and that one we are going to look at when we're now looking at the trade, the effects of the trade balance. So it's good that you've mentioned it. So let's just discuss it now. Let's talk about, so we are talking about an exchange rate that is low in this instance. Let's say we are on 1 rand is to 20. So your explanation, which is very correct, is that it becomes difficult for us to buy things from abroad, because if, let's compare, if $1 is worth 20 rand now, not so long ago it was worth 10 rand. So which means if you wanted to buy, say, let's say you are importing something that is worth $1,000, and you have a regular job in the country there. So it means how many things could you buy initially? Which means you could only buy 1,000 divided by, initially it was back in 2010, which means you could buy 100 items, which is 1,000 with the given rate. Right, you could buy 100 items, but now that the rate has almost doubled, it has depreciated by almost double, then it means it's 1,000 divided by 20. So which means you can only buy 50 items now with the same amount, right? With the same amount. So which basically means for us, things have become a lot more expensive. Now you need more rents. You need to pump in a lot more rents in there. But the opposite is true now when you're looking at it from their perspective now, the ones that are buying from us. So it means now they can basically take the very same amount that they used to spend in the country. Like if they want to spend $100 in South Africa, if they convert that now, basically gives them how much? 100 times 20 gives them a lot more than what it was giving them some years back. which is 1,000. So it's giving them double. So ideally, it means they are able to purchase more things. So as you are going to see much later, sometimes the government uses this as a strategy to make people buy from us, right? Because there are circumstances when the government wants people to buy from us, which is our exports going up. So they do that so that when people are buying from us, what's happening to our jobs, which means we are producing more now. Right? So that's a way to encourage them to buy from us by having a weak currency. But now it becomes a problem for us now when we want to buy from them. I know you guys maybe buy things from Shein or so. If you're going to be buying things from Shein, you are importing. So when the rate is not favorable now, you find that the prices are also a little bit up in terms of the rand. So in US dollars, the price is still the same, but in terms of the rands now, you need to be paying a little bit more than that. So in terms of what is right and what is not right, it depends. It basically depends with the policy that the government is pursuing at the time. So both of which has got advantages and disadvantages. Imports are very good. Imports are very good because like we are seeing, you guys have got access to clothes from Shein, right? That's very good. Some of those things we definitely don't make locally, so we need to buy them abroad, you see. But again, at the same time, we need to have a very good export industry so that we get foreign currency coming into the country through us selling abroad, you see. So your explanation is very right. Your explanation is very right there. Right. So now we're basically discussing now the effects of an appreciation and a depreciation on the currency. So we can look at that outside of this module. We can basically look at that, how it affects your life as a person living in that country. And then again, how it affects the economy as a whole. But again, for the most part, it becomes an indication of how well the country is doing, right? Which is not a good indication, of course, but unfortunately, we use that for many other reasons, which include the financial markets and the likes. But any kind of assessment here is allowed. Any kind of assessment is allowed. I don't know if you are answered on that one.
Yes, I'm answered there. So thank you.
All right, perfect. I think let's call it a day. Next time, maybe we can look at, now that you've mentioned this, we are going to be very quick looking at the trade balance. So our trade balance is the difference between exports and imports. So this is what you and I have been discussing just now, right? The effects of a depreciation, the effects of an appreciation on the trade balance. So just to sum it all up, we are basically saying when there's a depreciation, it basically means our currency has lost value, right? Then it basically means in terms of the local currency, our domestic currency, foreign companies can now buy a lot more from us. So what would be the effect of that on the trade balance? It means there's going to be more exports, and the result of that is more output on our side, you see. Though it's not exactly the same when it comes to the financial market, but we look at that there. So we are basically gonna, maybe we'll be looking at, we'll start off with the relationship between what happens when there's an increase in our Y, which is our GDP, what's the effect of that on the trade balance, etc., which is something that is a lot easy again. Right, that's fine. I think we'll pick a session, we'll pick some time during the week to look at this, maybe sometime, but after 8, I'm normally available after 8:15, then we can arrange this. It's another very short topic. All right. For now, enjoy the rest of your Sunday.